Hi, my name's Simon Baker, and welcome to the deep dive into marketplace revenues and cost initiatives. This is part of our ongoing Building Marketplaces in Challenging Times series. Today, we're looking at three things. One is the impact that the coronavirus has had on companies in a quantifiable format. The second is we put forward a model by which you can think about how to operate in these times. It's called the SPA model, SPA. Stabilize, prepare, and then accelerate. And finally, we then look at what are the real initiatives being undertaken by your peers in addressing the challenges given by the coronavirus around the world. Now, the question is, why are we doing these webinars and the webinar series? The team here at Online Marketplaces has a very strong view that, in challenging times like this, it's important to ensure that everyone gets access to good, relevant, and appropriate information to allow them to make smart decisions in their businesses. In fact, I've always believed that, and that's one of the reasons we started the Property Portal Watch conferences back in 2009. I want to make sure everything is fact-based and that we're making available information that's relevant. Now, there's a lot of information out there that's around what the big boys are doing, the Rightmoves, the realestate.com.aus, and the Zooplas, etc. That is great for them, but they are a very small group of relatively privileged, in a very privileged position, either well-funded, very strong cash flows, and a lot of the lessons of what they're doing are just really not relevant to portals out there. So it's really about identifying what the peer group does and has similar issues, and then providing you with real and actionable outcomes. So how we're doing this, now there's a number of initiatives that we are running as online marketplaces. We're doing surveys. We've run 2 surveys over the last 2 or 3 weeks. We're doing this our second webinar. We're writing some reports. We're launching podcasts, hopefully next week, where we'll be talking to C-level managers around the world about what they're specifically doing around the coronavirus. And then finally, we do a bunch of advisory work, and I'm currently advising 7 or 8 different companies about how they can really address some of the issues involved in involved with the coronavirus. So what's today about? So today's webinar is really a deep dive into the marketplace revenues and cost initiatives that people are doing. And I've broken into 3 areas. One is, let's quickly overview the impact of the coronavirus. Yes, it's having an impact. We all know that. So we don't want to say, hey, look, wow, here's an impact. What we want to say is, how much is that impact? And we'll use quantifiable analysis so that people get an idea of where they're sitting vis-a-vis their peers. Secondly, we want to present a model about how you can think about approaching today and planning for the future. And then finally, I want to share with you some specific and actionable initiatives that can be undertaken that's being undertaken by your peers and may be appropriate for your business. Now, the information today, what's it based on? Well, the Online Marketplaces Group has been around since 2009. We're based out of Madrid, Spain. And we run Property Portal Watch conferences and global online market conferences and news and information services for the last decade. Myself, I've been involved in online classifieds for 20 years. I used to run the REA Group a decade ago, the iProperty Group, and been the chairman of the iProperty Group and the Matula Group, and current chairman of the Real Estate Investor Group, all of which are publicly listed companies. I've invested into 30 plus different marketplaces and classifieds businesses over the last decade, and I am an advisor to many around the world. So what we want to do is bring that knowledge and experience and information that we're seeing day to day at the coalface to everyone who's participating on this call. Now, underlying this is a survey that we released, that we started on April 1st. And has been running for the last 5 days. And the data I'm going to use today to help throughout this presentation is based on the responses of 120 different, primarily C-level people. 75% of the people who fill out this survey are either C-level management or board members or founders. And they're from around the world. And you can see here by the pie chart on the left-hand side, we've got people giving us information from around the world and from all different types of companies. Companies of different sizes and different ages. So that information comes together to give a very good insight into what is happening around the market. So when we use survey-based results, you understand we're not just looking at what big boys are doing, we're not just looking at publicly available data, but we're sourcing information from the coalface to then present back to you about what's happening throughout the industry. Now, one point that's very important, we've now getting near the number of people who said they were going to join. We have 2 or 3 ways in which you can ask questions, because this is interactive. We are going to go for the hour through to 2 o'clock European time. There is either the chat function, where feel free to ask a question via that, or the Q&A function. So therefore, between those two, you'll be able to get a good idea of, you can ask me the question and then I'm very happy to have a crack at answering that question for you. So anytime we're going, just ask the question. Someone's asked me how many people are actually on this call. We're up to about 130 now. 110. We're expecting 180 to 190 on the call. So they'll keep growing over the next 5-10 minutes. Let's look around this presentation in 5 areas. One is, what's the pressure on marketplaces today? I want to introduce what's called the SPAR model, stabilize, prepare, accelerate, to really way of thinking about thought leadership in a business. We're then going to talk about stabilize initiatives in detail, and we're going to look at what your peers are doing today, and then how do you structure yourself for success? Because you can think about this all in theory, but if you haven't got the right structure in place, it's not going to work. And then we're doing some follow-up webinars to this over the next 3 or 4 weeks, and I'd like to let you know what we are doing. First of all, some survey results. We asked the people responding to the survey, what's the impact of the coronavirus? And there are 2 surveys. So this is the first survey we did, which was back in March 18th, which isn't that long ago, but feels like a very long time ago. Green is significant negative impact. Blue is slight negative impact. You can see here, the green has grown from 40% to 55%. And really, we're now with 95% of respondents say that it's having some sort of negative impact on their business. Not surprised at all that is occurring. As anecdotally, just talking to people out there, it's just very much a challenging time that we're going through. So then diving a bit deeper, we then say, right, we're going to look around non-financial visitor KPIs, non-financial customer KPIs, and then financial KPIs and what's happening. Across the portal and marketplaces industry, we're seeing that visits on average are down 26%. These are across the respondents. And if you look at what the majority are doing, so we're going to take basically one standard deviation each side. So it's 68 point something percent, but let's call it 70%. It's down between 5 and 50%. So it's having a major impact on the visitation to sites. Not rocket science here, but it does give you an idea of just the level of decrease that people are experiencing. What's driving that decrease? Well, organic traffic. So once again, green is bad, blue is slightly less bad. The key drivers here for those who've experienced we've had 75% of people say that they've had a decrease in organic traffic from Google, which means that at the end of the day, consumers are holding off looking and searching for real estate. Clearly, Google AdWords and vertical search engines are going to drop because people are saving money. They're not spending as much. You don't spend, you don't get the traffic. But direct traffic has fallen. Social media and email traffic has also fallen, which means that the market as a whole is taking a step back. Your visitors are taking a step back and trying to understand what is happening. Then we say, well, what's happening around frequency of visit, session duration, and inquiries generated? Frequency of visit is down 15%. And the majority of people in that range of 0 to 30%. Not surprising because people are just coming back less often. Session duration is staying about the same. We think that is because those who are searching are there for a reason, or they're for a reason they have to find a property even in these tough times, or they're there because they are sitting at home in lockdown, slightly bored and wanting to do something around searching potentially for the future. Maybe they're thinking 6 to 12 months down the track and they're starting a search now, or they're just tire kicking, basically just wandering around and looking at the various properties that are out there. And total inquiries have also dropped. Now that's the most important measure here because that's an indicator of the efficacy of your site. What's important here is that visits and inquiries have gone down basically in unison. Average of 27% drop in inquiries. Less inquiries for your customers means your customers aren't getting paid because they're not being able to convert. And if they're not converting and they're not getting paid, they're not going to pay you. It's a pretty simple process. We exist. Oriel's just asked, are we going to post this presentation? Yes, this presentation will be available after the call. So then we said, okay, what's now happening on the customer side? You know, and how are portals feeling about that? In general, customer numbers have dropped 15%. And depending on who you are, it can be in the range of 0 to 40%. So a significant drop in the number of customers that are working with portals. And when we said, well, how's that sort of look, right? The second half of March was much worse than the first half of March, and around 70% of people said that. So that means that it's getting worse, not getting better. And then when asked the question, and how long do you expect this to go for? 90% said it's going to be at least April, could be May, could be through June, and it might even be further. So expect more loss of customers as we go through this process. A loss of a customer means a loss of revenues, and a loss of revenues puts financial pressure on a portal. It's very simple economics, but that's what's driving it. Then we said, well, what's happening? Let's deep dive again, right? So what's happening with customers? Are they going out of business? Are they thus permanently closing? Is it sort of temporarily putting up shutters and saying, I'm just going to see what happens over time? Or are they just still in business but stop advertising on you? And what's interesting is the biggest decrease has been closing temporarily, roughly 42% of the response, and that was the main reason. And what we're seeing here is because real estate agency in many countries is a business that people can come and go from. There's no real qualifications needed. That a lot of these agents are just putting up shops and putting up the shutters and going off to do something different and earn income for themselves while the market has decreased. Around 30, just under 30%, 25-30% have just stopped advertising, and then a small 10% have actually closed. My guess is that this 10% is going to grow over the next 4 to 8 weeks. And yes, we will be increasing the number of surveys we do so we can see how these trends change over time. Yes, question from Ivo. Would be interesting to look at inquiries per listing and how that's changed. Yes, we plan to roll that out in the next survey. However, inquiries are down at a greater rate than listing volume, because here's that data now, Ivo. We can see that the listing volume is down 19%, but remember, inquiries were down more than that, around 27%. So by definition, the inquiries per listing must have dropped, a certain percentage. So that will have dropped as well. So we can see that for many people, the number of listings are down, and for many markets, the volume of listings is critical for their differentiation. So that does lead to an interesting challenge of how do you maintain listings on your site while at the same time earn revenues. And we'll talk about that a little later on. The next chunk of KPIs I really want to talk about are the revenue-based KPIs, because without cash coming in and without revenues, then we have a slight problem. So then what we see is on average, revenues are down 16% between February and March. And overall, 70% of people are between the range of no change and 40% change, which is a significant hit to a business. And when, anecdotally speaking, many portals expect this to get worse for the pretty obvious reasons. More customers go out of business. The impact of the coronavirus on just transaction volume as a whole causes it to decrease. The cash collections, which we haven't got here, which I should have included, are also down, right? Because not only are revenues down, but cash collections are down. A lot of people are saying, thanks very much, I'll take the advertising, I'm just not going to pay you. Or I want some sort of deferred payment. And we'll look at the initiatives that people are doing around that shortly. So there's actually a question, Oriel, do you have actual data directly from portals or all the research is based on those surveys? We do have data we can see behind. We've got data from specific portals as well, and also based on the surveying of the portals. So we've sort of come at it from a number of dimensions. Then we say, well, what's driving this decrease in revenue? Roughly 70% is driven by customers proactively reducing the amount they spend. They're not waiting for portals to give them an offer to longer, deferred payments. They're just saying, I'm cutting my spend. Thank you very much. And then when you look at where the spend is being cut, listing packages, value-added services, and we'll call it other products. Think of CRM systems, data products, and so on. Listing packages aren't really being stopped altogether, but the amount being spent is being decreased. So think of it, I used to buy 50 listings from you, I'm now going to buy 30 listings because I don't have that many listings to advertise. Or, if you're in the other products, then far more stopping of those products. And for a lot of people, they're just not even offered. Okay. So we're seeing that we expect this to increase once again as the market pressure increases on your customers. Question coming up here: does the revenue decline include those portals that have voluntarily cut their revenues? Yes, it'll be in this. It'll be in this mix as well. But we've got data a little bit later on around what percentage have offered their customers free or discount listings, and by what percentage that they are reducing them. Then we said, well, are customers asking for help? Saying, marketplaces, can you do something for me? The answer is yes. Most marketplaces, roughly 80% of marketplaces have had a customer saying, yes, I would like some assistance, and it's clearly mostly financial assistance. They're not that really interested in non-financial assistance. That's not surprising because you can give them all the extra products and all the additional information in the world, but it doesn't put food on their table. What's interesting though is when asked the question, what percentage of your customers are actually asking for assistance? It's somewhere between 20 and 25% of the customers are asking for assistance. So that means somewhere between 75 and 80% of the customers aren't actually asking for assistance. But if we respond just to the 20-25%, we're probably giving some free value to the other customers. So we've got to think about how we come up with some initiatives that balance addressing those who truly have a need versus those who just want a discount. And there are people out there who still have the capacity to pay and will want to use this period of time to build their brand and differentiate themselves from their competitors. Some other information is when we ask the C levels, what's the next 9 months look like? So April through December, and how you're going to go versus forecast. The average was we're going to miss our forecast by about 32%, and anywhere and the majority, the 70%, are between 10 and 52%. So they're very much saying, this is going to hurt a lot. And then on the cost side, we've already seen, and I've given a green arrow here because this is good if you're trying to keep cash in your business, is we've already seen costs reduced by about 15%, and anywhere between 0 and 40% as where the majority of people are operating. So people are cutting hard at the moment, and I've got a feeling there's a lot more cutting to come as the revenues really do dry up. Then we said, well, what does that all mean? And so when talking to the C-levels, basically 90% is saying, I'm going to miss my budget. Nothing surprising there at all. But what's important is that 60% said the viability of my business is at risk. There is a strong chance that in the short to long term, or short to medium term, 6 months is more medium term, we could go out of business. And that is something that we need to keep in mind as we go through this process. This is putting a lot of significant pressure on C-level managers. All of that gives you a bit of an idea of the level to which this is starting to hurt out there. We then say, well, how do we think about this problem? What are the mechanisms or the approaches we can take to ensure that we navigate the next 6 to 12 months in a way that is going to create value at the end? A model I want to talk to you about is the SPAR model. It's stabilize, prepare, accelerate. What does that mean? Stabilize is all about saying, I've got to make sure the business has enough runway to survive the impact of COVID-19. If we don't survive that impact, we're shutting up shops, we've gone out of business, and it's all over. It doesn't matter. I don't have to worry about the future because I am gone. Some of the key approaches that need to be taken are putting a crisis team in place. And we'll look at who's actually doing that and who's on that later on. We need to reforecast using zero-based cash budgets, and we need to keep doing it frequently to know how we're going, so tracking results. And I've called zero-based, meaning that we start from scratch. What is it that we really need in the business? What are the roles we really need? What are the products and services we really need to offer our customers? And if it's not in that we really need to category, look at how we cut them. And cash-based budgets, because you can have all the revenues in the world, but if you're offering deferred payments and your customers don't pay you, it doesn't matter what the revenue number is. You're still spending cash out the other end. Not surprisingly, your expenses are going to look more like cash going out. We need to reduce all non-essential costs, including people, fast. Continue to get revenues in from customers as best you can. Now, that means maybe offering them a discount, getting them to pay in advance. It doesn't really matter how you do it. You want to continue to extract some revenues from the industry to the best of your ability. You want to use this time to build customer relationships, because this is a long-term game. The people who are operating in the industry today are those who are going to be in the industry tomorrow and when we accelerate out of the downturn. And we need to put remote working systems and processes in place, because while people are in lockdown and working from home, we need to make sure we can manage them, because not everyone's sitting there working, and they're working in environments that sometimes are very challenging. But that working environment may become the new norm in the future. It just may be the way we operate. The prepare phase, and it overlaps with stabilize, because we have to start thinking about when we come out, what are we going to be doing? We need to prepare for the future, prepare and plan for the post-COVID-19 world. Understand what the local long-term likely impact on the industry and your customer's business. What's it going to be? Are we going to go back to where we were? Or will this shock us into operating in a market where people no longer need to visit properties in person or deal with an agent in person, or there'll be far more electronic contracts being exchanged, so on and so on and so on. What does the industry look like in the future? And therefore, based on that, what are the options that I would have to operate in that industry? And so on. And then we have to roll out initial innovative products and experiment. And people are doing that now, right? The Lifeful in Japan has rolled out enhancements on its app to allow better communication between agents and renters and landlords through an app. Once again, it's about addressing the immediate need of operating in a lockdown, social distancing world. As the future becomes clearer, these products become ingrained in the business in an end-to-end product set. We need to implement processes for the long-term operation environment. What does working from home look like? and start the capital raising discussions. Because if you're repositioning your business, you may need capital. There is capital out there. There are people who cashed up and they're waiting for opportunities to invest in businesses as they come out of this this crisis. And then accelerate is pretty much as it sounds. When appropriate, we need to accelerate the business and the business model so that we can grow as fast as we can at the right time. That means staffing up as quickly as possible. We need to, how are we going to communicate broadly to our target markets? How do we make sure that our products are fit for purpose? And then we'll probably need to actually raise the capital to accelerate growth. So this sort of model gives you a way of thinking about where am I in the process and what are the steps I should be doing to make it happen. So just a quick questions come in. It's about regarding the survey trends on revenue decline. How do these compare across the regions? The answer to that question is, for those people who have completed the survey, we're running a special session on later this week. And we're going to go into that in more detail there. So that was a bit of an incentive for people to actually complete the survey, because they get access to deeper information than applying here. There's another question here. Is there a difference in market outlooks for portals that focus on rentals versus those on for sale? Absolutely, yes. I think if you look at the underlying economics, if you're working today, you're probably in a stress situation. You probably, there's a chance you can lose your job or you're getting paid less. Therefore, you might have to look at downsizing from the home you own to renting, downsizing the rental you have to a cheaper rental. Of course, families are still growing, etc. So I think you'll find the rental market grows over time. What's interesting is there was some news that came out yesterday about Airbnb, how a bunch of these Airbnb apartments in the United Kingdom are now being placed on portals such as Rightmove and Zoopla for long-term rent. And I've got a feeling that the rental market is one that will come out of this crisis earlier and is far more open to social distancing in dealing with customers, because the long-term value of the transaction is much lower than a for sale property. Now, back to this process. When we think about it, the question is, when is it time to accelerate? Okay. Now it comes down to what sort of curve we're in. Are we in a U curve, a B curve, a P curve, a W curve, or an L curve? Now, what does that mean? Well, U is you have a steep drop, you have a fairly long period of flatness, and then you grow again. The V curve is a steep drop and a quick rebound. W is the drop, the rebound, whoops, we're dropping again because everyone accelerated too quickly, and then we accelerate out of it. And L we do not want to see, because it's sort of one-way traffic to a much different world than we have today. So that gives you an idea how to think about it. When we asked the CEOs what they thought, the average amount of direct impact that people believe they're going to incur is around 7 months. And by direct, it means either in lockdown, some sort of government-enforced restrictions, unable to trade as we normally did, social distancing rules in place, and so on. And that'll be followed by about 8 months on average to reach the same economic performance as we did in January and February this year. So we're looking at sort of 15 months or to mid next year of a very challenging period of time. Now, then if you say, well, okay, well, what are some of the indicators we can look for that we're coming out, right, of this crisis period? And it's really around the virus and how people look at it. And so McKinsey got some interesting data here, which I'll share with you. This is from a report about 10 days ago. The things that will indicate whether the market trend has turned is going to be, is there a decline in cases, a sustained decline in cases, the number of cases within your area without a rebound, and is there no community transmission or very low levels? So basically everyone's being tested, no one has it, or people have had it, and there's no way in which it can continue to be spread in a market. Is there a health response ready? Meaning the lockdown laws and quarantine orders have been relaxed. maybe not totally eradicated, but have been relaxed. And testing is widely available with fast turnaround. So you can identify those that are still carrying the virus. And finally, there's herd immunity. And this will take time. There's availability of antibody testing and the available workforce who has immunity. So the majority of your workforce has immunity, right? So they can work, they can interact, and it's not going to be contagious amongst them. And there's an effective vaccine, which these guys think is probably spring 21. So we're talking around that 15-month period anyway. Before that becomes available, it may be earlier. There are tests that are antibody testing now that are being developed around the world that are quite rapid testings. So they're going to be indicators for you about when in your market things have turned. There's a quick question here before going. It's from Oriol. Is in order to prepare for a post-COVID market, have you analysed what happened in China during the last few months in terms of real estate transactions and property portal performance? Not in detail. Transactions are increasing. I'm less interested in China and more need to look more deep in places like Singapore and Taiwan, because I think those markets will have, I think, quite interesting insights into how you manage. I think a lot of the stuff you're going to get out of China is unfortunately not going to be as accurate as it could be. And so yes, I'll say that transactions are starting to come back. I just finished a call with the guys at Juwai who say, yes, transactions are coming back. There are cashed up Chinese who are looking to buy internationally. So they are coming out of the U. The question is it a W or is it going to be a true U? We don't know yet, but they are starting to grow, and the volume interactions is starting to grow again. So then we start to say, well, let's talk about stabilize and what are the initiatives being undertaken by your peers today. Now, when I think about the stabilizing process, I have to think about how do I look at this in a bit of a model. And I want to think about 4 stakeholders: your customers, your internal stakeholders, your shareholders, and visitors. And I want to look at what's happening in each one of them. So with customers, it's all around, can I collect receivables as soon as possible? Because that's cash that you want to bring in, and people owe you the money, right? And you want to grab it before they disappear. Either they go out of business or they just shut up shop and are not paying anyone anything. You want to preserve revenues as best as possible by keeping customers paying something. You want to build relationships, strong relationships with your customers over time. And you want to help build remote service provision for your customers, allow them to do their job better. So that's sort of how we sort of view the initiatives around the customers. For internal, it's all about zero-based cost budgeting that I've talked about already, cut employee costs, restructure the workforce, improve your systems and processes, and making sure cash is king. Okay, that's very important. Expectation management is for shareholders very critical, because they're the ones that are going to be impacted when it comes to capital raising, because you're probably not going to raise at the same level that you last raised money. It'll be a down round. They'll get either diluted or have to participate. And you should also be looking at M&A. What are the M&A opportunities in my market, consolidation opportunities, etc. The pricing may not be perfect at the moment, but it could actually be to your advantage. And finally, you got to look at the enhanced consumer experience. How do I build a better experience for my customers? So let's do a bit of a deep dive. 2 other quick questions. V or U, how long does the bottom last in both scenarios? Well, with V-type scenarios, it's pretty quick turnaround. The market does a bit of a bounce. I've got a feeling this is more of a U-based scenario. And then the U one, how long's a piece of string? I don't know. If anyone tells you they know, I think that's bullshit. What we can only do is look at what's happening in each market. While there are lockdown provisions, while the markets are having an increase daily of the number of infected people, while testing is not fully available, and while the death rate is quite high, then I think you're going to be in a lockdown, restricted environment for an extended period of time. And also then comes down to the culture. Some markets are far more attuned to crises. and in those cases, they will bounce back probably a bit faster because they've said we've been through similar things before and handle it well. Think of the swine flu and Hong Kong and Singapore and those places as good examples of what's happening. Another quick question is, do you notice the main differences between geographical areas, lockdown countries versus others? Yes, we do see some differences in those at the high level. We're going to go, actually, that's one that we're still analyzing in detail. And, we're covering off in detail for those who actually completed the survey. So I can't give you everything right now, but I can give you as much as I can at the moment. So let's look at each of these areas in a bit of detail. Customer-focused initiatives. When asked the question, the type of assistance that you're providing your customers, 15% aren't providing any assistance. More than 75% are providing financial assistance, and about 35% are rolling out non-financial assistant products. And if you think about it, that makes sense, because if you're Rightmove and you've got a 75% EBITDA margin and you've got 220 million pounds in EBITDA, you can afford to give away 60, 70 or 80 million of that, and you're still going to be profitable. And it's not going to change the game very much for you in the short term. However, if you are break even and you give away, then you're going to go loss position. Or if you're a loss-making player building your position in a developing country, then the world is very different. And you rather give away non-financial type assistance to your customers to keep them happy while extracting as much money as you can, than giving away your product. I think it's easy to give away when you have a lot of money. Think of Zillow, for example. They're sitting on $2.3 billion worth of cash, 2.3 billion. And even if they've got a year of basically giving stuff away, they've still only used $1 billion. So they've still got $1 billion left. So they're talking about numbers that no one else really has access to. So I think we need to focus on the fact that there's a lot of players out there who are living in a very, very different world. So when we talk about the financial assistance that's occurring, we say, well, what's being provided here? Now, the financial assistance that is being provided is around a couple of things. One is free, deferred payments, and discounts. Now, clearly, free products, about a third, 30%, third, are giving away free listing subscriptions of some form. Maybe not to all the customers, but maybe to selected customers. Free listing enhancements and free other products. Just under 40% are giving deferred payments, and these deferred payments are in the order of 3 months is the average, and everyone fits in that 1 to 3 months. So most people are skewed to 3 months is the answer to the question there. And then when we look at discounted listings, so discounted listings, discounted enhancements, and think of that as premium products, and discounted other products. Think of CRM, data reports, etc. The average discount rate is 36% across the range, and the majority are between the 15 to 50%. So people would prefer to give a discount and keep cash coming in than to give away something free. It makes a lot of sense. So then we say, what is a summary of the initiatives that you need to be doing? We've tried to pull that together here. Deferred payments, you want to keep revenues at previous levels and collect later. The question you've got to ask yourself is, will the customer be there in 3 to 6 months? And will the customer see that as helping them or just pushing the problem down the path? Because if you're deferring for 3 to 6 months, in 3 to 6 months, they're paying double, right? And if they're having problems paying today and we expect it to go for as long as we see it going for, then they're not going to be able to pay double at that period of time. So then you're going to do another deferment, and eventually they will either pay or will end up being money that you just never collect. So, and you probably don't want to be in that category. You've got discounted products. It keeps some cash coming through the floor. Can it be tied to payments in advance? So you want to think about it as saying, well, can I get people to pay in advance? Pay 50%. I'll give it to you for 50%, pay in advance, or give you 30% of what you used to pay, but pay in advance. So I've got cash coming in. Discounted bundles, similar concept, targeted to certain segments of the market. I was working with a company last week where we're thinking about how do we target the top end, those we know have money, bundling up products that they're probably not going to voluntarily buy over the next 3 to 6 months. and discounting that as a bundle, getting them onto the drug of the premium products. But then you target people. Free non-core products sounds great, give it away, but people aren't probably going to use it anyway. A bunch of the products that we've seen out there are products that, have in this sort of down market aren't going to get a lot of use. So you're giving away something to someone who doesn't value it, and so you go around in a circle, and no value is really created. And then free core products, you're going to be seen as the friend of the customer. Fantastic. You are transferring money from your bank account to them. But you want to keep their listings. There's got to be a quid pro quo. What are you getting in return for that? And how do you do it without polluting all customers? I want to target some customers with free, but not all customers. Non-financial assistance that's being provided. And we broke these into 4 areas: social distancing tools, online education, bringing the industry speakers, so really bringing someone to help calm the industry down, and then other products and services, more business as usual stuff. The areas that seem to be working well, people are doing improved home presentation and things around virtual tours, video tours, live online showings, links to YouTube, etc. Okay. Home showings, online bookings, online home, for online home showings. Better agent buyer communications with embedded messaging apps. Sales and closing tools. So you got online auctions, electronic contracts of sale, virtual expos, and so on. Things that allow customers to still buy properties. And I was just talking to the guys from Juwai, and they did something last week, and they had 1,000. They generated 1,000 leads out of it through an online, sort of like an online expo. So it can work, absolutely can work. They've got improved premium products, which is more business as usual, and then information, industry podcasts, COVID market surveys, continuous training, education, and so on. So there's a lot of very non-financial assistance type products that can help the customer base. Then we look at internal focused initiatives. The main areas that have been reduced are the marketing costs. No surprise there. On average, it's been reduced basically 50%. And everyone's sort of fitting between 20 and 75%. The majority are between 20 and 75%. External suppliers and other internal costs have been reduced to around 30%, and employee costs around 22%. And you can see that where the majority sit in that range. So there is a lot of cost cutting that is being done at the moment. Diving deeper into the marketing cost, we can see that if you were doing TV and radio and outdoor, you've cut it. 70% have just cut it. We're not doing it anymore, and 10% have reduced it. Other online marketing has been cut. Vertical searches definitely cut by 25%, and Google search has been cut by about 15%. So you can see where the spend is being cut, with Google being at the bottom of the pecking order in terms of where to cut my marketing spend. Asking discounts from your suppliers is critical. So 70% are getting discounts from their suppliers, and half are getting deferred payments from their suppliers. Whatever you can do to get money or to save money going out the door is critical at this point. Cash is king. Reduce employee. Now, when you think about employee cost savings, it comes into 3 sort of ways. There's reducing the number of employees, reducing the hours worked per week, or reducing the wages per hour, or a combination of them all. Okay, so we have here roughly 30% have downsized their workforce, and on average, that's been a 22% downsize. So 1 in 5 employees have been let go from the business, and it ranges from 5 to 40 for the majority. Roughly a 30% again have reduced the number of hours working per week, and that's roughly on average been reduced by 1/3. So they've really cut back on the number of hours that employees are working in their business. And the wage per hour, about 40%, just under 40% of people have reduced salaries by an average of 31% across the board. These are the initiatives that have been done in what is a relatively complex time, and it's been done to save jobs and to ensure that the company has the right employees to accelerate afterwards. Of course, some people are in some markets, you can put people in what's called furlough or standing down. They call it in Australia, where you are still an employee of the company, but not getting paid. You stay at home, you have no benefits, but you're not fired. So you're in this limbo land. It's like sitting on a bench, waiting for your term in the game, but you're not getting paid. And then other companies are encouraging employees to take all their leave at this point in time, which you got to ask, wait a second, I'm on lockdown. Why am I taking leave? I can't go anywhere. So I'm not really interested in taking leave. So that's a hard sell. And then you say, what parts of the businesses are being cut? Across the board, real focus is on customer support, sales, and a little bit of technology are the ones that are being downsized most. And the employees, a lot of full-time and contractors have gone, part-time, of course, and clearly probation-based employees would lose their job quite quickly, because they're the easiest ones to let go if you are going to let people go in a business. Then we looked around government assistance and said, well, are you getting government assistance? If the answer is, and basically just under 50% said yes, we're applying for salary assistance, cash loans, which obviously comes from banks or from the government, tax deferment, etc. And a third have just not applied. So once again, it's all about saying, where else can I get cash or cash preservation in this process? So then looking at the initiatives that I'd be taking under the cash side in detail, clearly reducing market expense makes sense. There's no point in generating more traffic to your site if at the end of the day that traffic is going to be hard to convert to a transaction, because the agents may not be able to interact with the buyers. You might not be able to see the house. The customers may not be willing or may be unwilling to, or may not be able to get a loan at this point in time because their jobs may be at risk. There are so many interacting components in this that it makes it very challenging. A contrarian view, of course, is that we should actually accelerate marketing now if we can, because we can market when the cost of marketing is low. People are bored and sitting at home, so you have a chance to influence them, and I can differentiate myself from the competitors. So we can use this time to capture the audience from our competitors. There's a potential point there. Reduce all other non-salary costs. Yes. Cut hard. Don't leave any stone unturned. And anything you can potentially do, just cut it. No use having €1 go out the door that does not need to go out the door. Reduce the salary expense. Very much, once again, go hard. I would be thinking more about reducing what you pay people rather than firing people. The reason being is you've still got the employees there. They're probably working from home. They're probably wanting to do something that's constructive, and it keeps them aligned with the team, especially as you go into the prepare phase and you're starting to think about the world post the coronavirus. How are you going to perform, and having the team ready is going to be quite critical. And you should be gaining government assistance. That's pretty obvious. Then we said, well, let's have a look at what visitor-focused initiatives should be done. Now, not surprisingly, most of these initiatives that are being done at the moment are really linked to the non-financial consumer-focused initiatives, because it's just the other side of the coin. So remote viewings, home showings, renter-buyer agent communications, and so on. It's all about bringing those two parties together in a far more efficient and effective way, and rolling out tools and products to allow that to occur. Some of the other stuff that's been worked on are AVM models and market reports. Some people are rolling out business reportals, things like which agents are now fully online. It's basically helping people find the agents that are able to work with them remotely. Real estate support services, what are the various tools, notaries that are currently working, because notaries are very important, but who can I get access to, who will work with me electronically, and so on. So they're providing information to help their audience and keep them engaged around the brand and what the brand stands for. On shareholder focused initiatives, we've got to say, well, what's the world like at the moment? When asked, C-level leaders said around 35% said that there's going to be this whole coronavirus have a significant impact on my cash reserves, and 80% said it's going to be a significant or slight impact. 75% is going to really be a negative impact on my capital raising, and 70% said it's going to be a negative impact on my M&A activities. None of that should be surprising because it is a tough world that we're operating in, and if you're looking to raise capital, it's going to be challenging. What's more important is that if in 6 months the impact is still going, then it's somewhere around 65% have said, look, I'm going to have to raise money, and they believe it's going to be at a discount, which creates problems for valuations and dilution of existing shareholders. What I would think about then in terms of my shareholders is saying, well, I've got to set expectations and keep my communications very open. It's important to keep them up to date. Those who are funding the company up to date with how you're going, what the initiative is doing, how much cash you've saved, what the current runway of the business is, and so on. Do conference calls, shareholder updates, and make it frequent. Build a funding document if needed. Keeping a strategy alive is important. This is a document that should be constantly reflecting how you're thinking about the future and used for raising money. It's a live document. And that can be shared at any point in time, because as you come out of the prepare phase and into the accelerate phase, you want to be able to have that on people's desks to say, this is how we're viewing the world. These are the assets we have. This is why we're going to do so much better in this new world. You should invest in us. If you can, have someone looking at M&A, either to merge, either to acquire businesses that are consolidation in the market, or bolt-on acquisitions, things that maybe makes the social distancing world easier to deal with. If you can do that, you need to continue that going through the process, and prepare shareholders for a down round. You've got to, at the end of the day, you're going to have a down round. The shareholders need to be aware of that if you need to raise capital, of course, in the future. And then we said, well, how do I then, that's all great, but how do I make sure I structure for success? And if you don't get your structure right, then all of this is theoretically very interesting, but it's going to be very hard to implement. So in structuring for success, I've got to have a coronavirus crisis team. Interesting enough, only 60% said they had that team in place. It should be much higher, and should be everyone having one in place. It needs to involve everything from advisors to board members to the CEO, and through key aspects of the business. You have to be open, transparent, clear on what the objectives are, and willing to do whatever it takes to keep the business surviving, and then making sure it's prepared for the next phase of growth. And then leading on to that, part of what we're doing is rolling out these webinars on a frequent basis, because we believe it's important to continue the dialogue and to continue to provide information like we're providing here today to everyone. We've got coming up a webinar later on this week for those who have filled out the survey. I will send it out later on today. I'll give you access. We're going to talk about regional splits, and it's more of an interactive roundtable session where people are asking questions. We're then going to have an open Q&A session. We're going to try this next week, just limited to 20 people, so that people can sit and discuss some of the key issues happening to their business, and work on some of these problems together. We are going to run on the 20th. We've talked about stabilize. We're now going to do prepare. We're going to start to say, I trust you guys have heard enough about, the world's on fire. We've got to do our best to address those issues. We're doing that, but what's it going to look like once we come out? Because we might come out sooner than we expect. How do we prepare? So we're going to have on the 20th, so it's a couple of weeks, we'll do a bit of a survey beforehand to get people's views, so we can then start to coalesce around some core themes about what the industry is going to look like, how businesses should position themselves for that, what are the opportunities that we think are going to make the most money. And then we'll have some roundtable discussions with some C-level leaders about how they're coping and what they're doing, and whether they're operating in a how they're handling the working from home environment and so on. So they're the range of things that we're offering, just to keep people up to date with what's happening through this crisis. Now, before I wrap up, we've got 10 minutes. Please ask questions, as some have come through on the chat or on the Q&A. I don't mind which one it comes through. It turns up at the same place. Question I missed in the survey: what do you think will happen to property prices in your reporting currency? I agree, we need to ask that question. We are planning to run a survey for agents in some markets as well. But my guess is that the property prices will drop. They'll drop because there'll be a lot more distressed buyers, people who had mortgages, who can't pay and need to convert the house into some sort of liquid asset. So I think that's going to create significant opportunity. Do you think customer expectations will be different when it's over? Yes. I think the agents will have different expectations. I think the consumers will have different expectations as well. Everything is going to be far more remote, far more distant, far more automated. And I think it's just going to be a very different world that we operate. I'd like to thank everyone for joining today. I hope this was useful information. As I said, the reports will be available for people to have a look at. I want to thank our partners, Affimo, Box Brownie, Code Library, iVox, Portal Chat, Utopia Analytics, and Watergreen Financial Capital, because for their help and in supporting the business. I hope this was useful for everyone out there. We will send out a survey. If you didn't like it, please tell me. If you do like it, please tell me. Whatever we can do better, just please tell me so we can improve. Anyway, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great day. And if you have any other questions, you can always email me directly. Thanks, everyone.